I'm Chris Venus. I'm the head of the client function here at MentionMe. And what I want to talk about in this section now is, you've heard lots of big picture vision, you've heard lots of ideas, you've heard how Mariam is turning that into reality for Viator. We want to talk, obviously that works really well for Viator, but obviously everyone here works for a different brand and you have different customers, you have different priorities, you have different things going on, and every brand in this room is completely unique. And what I want to talk about is how do you take kind of the big picture idea and boil that down into taking that first step, right? What should we do next, right? You've got teams of people stretched all over the place. You've got to think about the priorities of what you're actually going to do. And one of my favorite personal quotes is always, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, right? So I think ideally, when you leave this room today, having gone through this last bit of the presentation, you'll have an idea of the sort of roadmap that you could go on and the steps that you can take in order to actually implement the pieces we're talking about and turn them into a practical reality, right? So that's very much me. I'm very logical. I'll take a step progression to absolutely almost everything. So when we think about that, we think about kind of a 4-step process. And if you signed up with MentionMe 2 years ago, we very much would have been talking about the very first step on this journey, and there wouldn't necessarily have been much beyond that. So getting that tracked referral program up and running, optimizing it, and making sure that it was bringing lots of new customers into your business, that it is encouraging repeat purchase from your existing customers. But that was about the extent of where we got to. And it's only with the latest advances that we've got with our data, with the insights, with the AI and modeling that we're building off the back of it, that we're actually enabling you to take further steps of that journey and progress down a roadmap with us, right? So not only looking at referral as purely a channel that's going to bring you money, but also thinking about how does it help us understand and change our vision of who our best customers really are. So thinking about a customer not just as what they individually spend with us, but also all of the actions they're doing that drive value to our brand, like referral, like leaving reviews, those things as well. And then from there, how do you take that data and that view of your best customers and use that to drive efficiencies across your business and decide how to nurture those customers, how to go out and identify more of them, right? So those are great customers for us. They're coming in, they love our brand, they're recommending us, they're bringing more customers in through word of mouth. How do we actually do more of that? How do we find more of those customers when we go out looking for new customers? And everyone in this room will have a different opinion on who your best customer demographic is. Some of you will be really broad. Some of you will think, well, pretty much anyone in the world could be a customer of ours. Other people are going, no, we're very targeted on a very specific segment or demographic of customer, right? So thinking about who is actually going to be your best customer, and I think using our data to help you change that opinion is a big part of what we're going to talk about. And then ultimately fully optimizing your business for advocacy. So how do you take that data, those signals, that understanding that you've built and use it to differentiate your customer experience? So thinking about things like providing different service interactions when people reach out because they're a strong advocate of your brand could be a really good way of starting to do that. And you need to talk in high level. Obviously, this doesn't happen overnight, right? You have to take this as a stepped approach and you'll progress over time. Very much start with that referral side of things. And I'm going to talk about, how long this might take. A typical brand, this might take something like 18 months to 2 years in order to get all the way down this journey, right to the other end of this roadmap. But ultimately, that only starts if you start that first step today, right? Think about how you can take that first step. And if you're in the room and you're a customer and you've already taken the first step, or maybe the first 2 steps on this roadmap, well, what's the next step that you can be taking? What is the next thing that you can be doing in order to improve and move forward? And I'm going to talk through that roadmap in a bit more detail. So we very much see that very first step as being about a referral program, making sure that you've got the data coming in that's going to underpin everything that we want to do in the later steps, right? So starting to activate that referral program, starting to work out how it's going to work, how you're going to optimize it, how you're going to make it resonate with your customers specifically. Mariam, you talked really well to all of the A/B testing that you were doing, how you ran your user surveys, for example, to understand what really resonates with our customer base, what incentivizes them. Is it things like rewards, for example? So thinking about A/B testing almost as a mindset, right? Of like, we have to A/B test. We can't think we're going to put out our first offer and that's it. We'll just wait for the money to roll in. That'll be fantastic. Everyone's going to sign up. Everyone will want to do it. No, we need to get in the mindset of constantly testing and learning and finding what works for our customers. And what works for them 1 year might not work for them in 3 years' time, but constantly testing and working it out. Which channels do they like to share on, right? And we think of A/B testing as You can think about how easy it is to implement things. Implementing a new share channel, super easy, versus the impact it's likely to have on your program is likely to be a really high impact. So if your customers love to interact on WhatsApp, or they love to interact over SMS, or they prefer to use email, we can test that really quickly with them, and we can make sure we work out which channels really work for your customer demographic. We can look at what copy resonates. Give your customer 35% off, get 35% off for yourself. That might not work. It might be give 10, get 10. It might be something completely different. We have to work out what really resonates and how that moves your customer base forward. So looking at things like A/B testing, prioritizing what's going to work for your brand, and finding that kind of secret sauce or magic ingredient that's ultimately going to give you the performance you're looking at, both to bring in new customers and revenue, because that's critical to everyone in this room, but also thinking about that starting to build that bank of data that we're going to use further down the line. You also have to think about your customer journey with your brand. Where are those moments of delight we always think about with your brand? Where are they interacting with your brand at a point where they're thinking really positively about it, right? So in the case of Mariam, you've got when you're going on holiday or when you're making a booking, right, is a clear point that you're gonna find a moment of delight. If you're an e-com brand, it's likely to be when they're making a purchase. So when they're in that post-purchase screen, they've just bought that new item of clothing, they're really looking forward to getting it. That's a moment of delight for them. Other brands, it's going to be something else. It might be, I log back into my app to check my member status quite regularly. That's something I do with British Airways, for example, where I have membership. I log in, I look at my points, right? And if I've got there, hey, why don't you recommend your friends? Looking for where that is and where those moments of delight exist in your customer journey and everywhere that you might touch or interact with your clients, whether that's through email, in-app, it might even be physical mail shots, right? You might have a business that's part online, part offline. You might have stores in your mix. Where are your customers interacting with and experiencing your brand, and where are the moments that they find the biggest points of delight that you think, actually, that's something I want to harness, that's something I want to capture and have in front of them. Maybe you've got a physical product that they use and you could literally stitch it into the labels or something like that. I also think you want to think about the segmentation and targeting. So this is something that very much you might not do on day one, but you might start to think we're going to go broad to start with, and then we're going to narrow it down over time, right? So in time, we're going to look at treating particular segments of our customer base. Maybe you have VIP customers already. How do we treat them slightly differently to the standard populace of everything that we're doing? So we don't have this kind of one size fits all for all customers, but we start to think about customers based on who they are and their uniqueness to our brand. So you can segment things like your VIP audience, maybe students resonates really well for you. There's lots of different ideas that might enable you to actually drive up your performance and really tailor the offers to particular segments. You might find that your VIP customers don't need as big an incentive to recommend you because they're already predisposed to like your brand. And they're actually probably recommending you more anyway than the typical customer. And therefore, you can think about how to you might actually protect your margin more in those particular scenarios, right? So thinking about how to tailor that and bring it forward. From there, one of the things that we've developed is smart AI modeling. So we know that not every customer of your brand is likely to make a referral, right? There's only, much as we might all wish in this room that every customer absolutely loves our brand and is going to walk around talking about it, the reality is that not all of them do. And so we've built AI modeling that predicts when customers are likely to make a referral and ultimately looks at whether or not they will. And then we can do a whole number of things. So we can look both for customers who are likely to make a referral. Should we be tailoring the offers that we give to them? Do we look at reduced offers? Do we look at increased offers for people who we think are likely to make a referral? Do we go away from discounts and offer gift with purchase, for example? And we can also look at things like customers who are unlikely to make a referral and look at what else is important to your brand at this point in time. So perhaps you'd like to understand more about your customers and what they think about you. If they're not likely to make a referral, well, why don't we run an NPS survey and let's look at what they think about us and get them to tell us what we can do differently as a brand in order to improve our offering to make them more likely to refer us. Or why don't maybe we want to increase the size of our active database and the number of people that we're able to market and target and segment. Maybe we'd like to encourage repeat purchase because that's really important for our brand and we want to offer discount on second purchase if you do that within 30 days. So we can look at much smarter segmentation and targeting of our audiences based on that smart AI modeling to say, well, if you're not likely to refer, what else could we be doing with you? Ultimately, you're at this touch point touch point, maybe it's post-purchase, for example. That's a really key point where we can capture something from the customer. If they're not likely to refer, well, don't pop that up in front of them and show them a referral message, just because they'll just close it and they'll walk off and they'll do something else. So what else can we show them? What else might be important to them that would drive value to us as a brand? Starting to think about customer data intelligence and like how do we actually then start to leverage the data that we've gathered. So we've started to optimize our referral program. We've got some great data coming in. We've started to get enough to give us the data we need to be smart about who we're targeting, who we're actually asking to refer versus doing other actions. Now we've got that data, what are we going to do with it? Well, the first thing we need to do is kind of start getting it into your ecosystem to enable you to start unlocking it and starting to use it in smarter ways. So we've got a number of out-of-the-box platform integrations, people like Emetria, Klaviyo, Emarsys, SAP, Salesforce, Bloomreach, Attentive are all partners of ours, so it's super easy to turn on a connection into these platforms, get the data in there and start leveraging it. But we also have other ways of getting data into platforms. So regardless of what platform you have in your business, we can start to give you that first-party data that we have been collecting, all of those connections that Darren talked about earlier, that huge network diagram of people, right? If we can start giving you that data, then you can start thinking about what you could do with it in real time, right? So growing your database, looking at referrals, so something as simple as sending a nurture campaign to people who have made a referral but haven't taken up the offer yet, right? They've got that voucher code sitting in their inbox, but they haven't yet purchased with the brand, so reminding them that it's there and it's going to expire in 7 days. Increasing, things like repeat rates based on the segmentation that you can think about differently. So rather than thinking about your customers as kind of this individual customer revenue, or what if they're actually advocating for the brand? They might not be in a position to spend again today, but if they're recommending other people, if they're driving in other people, then how do we segment? How do we use that data in order to nurture them and ensure that they continue to do things that are driving the growth of our brand, even if they're in a position where they're not actually going to spend with us? Really interesting conversation with a customer the other week. They were talking about the fact that they sell quite high-end headphones, for example, and that's not an item that people tend to buy really regularly, right? It might be something that you replace once every 4 or 5 years. So actually repeat purchase is not something that tends to happen significantly for them, but they still see really good advocacy in their customer base. They still see people being willing to recommend them because they love the product so much. And therefore they want to think about, well, how do we nurture that? How do we send them comms and view that action of advocacy as something that is still an interaction with the brand that has value to us, rather than how do we get them to buy another product from us? How do we get them to shop again today? Think about if we nurture that action, they will recommend more people and that will give us value. From there, I think we talked a bit about once you're starting to change your opinion on who your best customers might be, then you're going to be looking for more of them, right? So ideally, now we've got a different opinion on who our best customers are. It's no longer just about what they individually spend with the brand. It's about what they bring to the brand and how they help us drive our growth. How do we go out and find more people who look like that practically? How do we actually leverage that first-party referral data? And in our case, we can build you things like lookalike audiences on social and say, well, we know who's likely to refer. We know the profile of a referrer for your brand. Let's program that into a lookalike seed audience. Let's push that out to social and let's try and bring more of those people back into your brand, right? And ultimately, rather than going kind of really wide and saying, let's market at everyone and see what sticks, like let's go more targeted. Let's go after the people who we think are likely to really love our brand and likely to be great customers and advocates of ours as we go forward. This can help you lower your CPA, save you a lot of time and increase your marketing budget to be spent elsewhere. But ultimately, leveraging that on things like Facebook, leveraging that on things like Google Audiences, for example, we would enable you to do and kind of change your picture of who your best customers are and bring that in today. And then the next thing on here, and this is kind of the list of ideas of where we're up to at the moment. This list will expand forevermore beyond this as we start to get further and further into the data and everything we can do. But ultimately starting to unlock what really creates customer advocacy in your customer base and thinking about that extended customer revenue diagram, right? So starting with our individual who's spent £48 with the brand today, the people that they recommend directly, the fact that those people then subsequently go on to recommend more people into our brand. So building out that map and looking not just at, this is an individual representation of one customer. Nobody in this room is probably likely to say, right, let's ring that person and find out what's going to work for them. Let's ring the next person, let's ring the next person. It's not necessarily scalable, but what we can do is we can roll that up into cohorts and look at everything that's going on. So for people who have higher extended customer revenue, which of them are active? Which of them are actively working with the brand today? They're actively recommending in more people who are spending money. Which of them perhaps are dormant? Which have lapsed? Let's look at the medium ECR people, those ones that are active today, and then we can look at particular targeted campaigns, things we want to do to target particular segments in this audience, right? And we can layer this up with your existing approaches, how you target, how you personalize, how you segment, and you can think and say, right, okay, so maybe I'd start with somebody who's currently a medium ECR individual who's quite active. Maybe my objective is to try and get them to become a high ECR individual. And are we going to do that through trying to get them to recommend more people into the brand? Are we going to do that through trying to get their friends to spend more money when they come in? Perhaps they're bringing in people who could spend more. The answer to those things will be different for each of you in this room. But ultimately, once you start to get this data and once you start to unlock it and spread this value from everything that you've built with your fantastic referral program wider into your business, then you can really change how you approach your customer base and how you unlock value out of them. I'm going to talk a little bit about and kind of wrap up towards the end. So ultimately, back to that original quote at the start, right, is like, what's the first thing you can do? You've seen a whole journey that you can potentially go on with Mention Me, where you might start, right? So whether you're somebody who's thinking about buying Mention Me, we know that peak is coming up for most of the brands in the room. We're probably all there going, oh, we're sort of half ready, but we're not quite ready for peak to hit us yet. We know that referral takes time to build that performance, to do the A/B testing, to work out what's really going to resonate for your brand. So if you want to see good performance for things like Black Friday and Christmas, then you probably need to be starting right now, because the first few months is when you're going to really work out what really resonates for your customer base and how to drive that performance. If you only turn it on Black Friday, then you're probably not going to see results until the middle of next year. So thinking about, let's take the first step, let's start unlocking that referral performance, let's do that now. We know lots of our competitors are doing it and we want to harness it. But also, if you're an existing customer, maybe you're already doing the first 2 steps on here, maybe you're doing the first 3 steps. Well, what is the next thing you want to be doing? What's most valuable to you? You don't have to do it in this order, right? You might say, well, actually, I want to take that ECR data and I want to run some targeted, segmented campaigns. That is the most valuable thing I can be doing. Well, come and talk to us. We'll help you do it. It's not that scary. You don't have to do it all on your own. But ultimately, I think the most important thing you can possibly do is take that next step. So hopefully when you leave the room today, you can be thinking about, well, what is that next step for our brand? What is the next thing that we want to do that will really help us move forward?